Hey, what's up you guys? I'm Sara Lubratt, and today we are talking about my top 10 tips for how to write a book in 2024. This is my 4th year in a row of making these videos, and I feel like the tips get better and better every single year. And to make it even better, you guys are technically not even getting 10 tips this year, you're getting 20, because this video is a collaboration with Ana Neu. I'm talking about 10 tips here on my channel, and then Ana will also be talking about 10 different tips over on her channel, which will be linked down in the description box below and at the end of this video. Ana is another writer here on YouTube that talks about her process of writing a book and is currently working on self-publishing her debut novel, and she's also the host of the Writing with Ana Neu podcast. But first things first, I want to say congratulations on wanting to write a book. You are setting out to create something absolutely wonderful that's brand new to the world. If you go on to find these tips helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a big thumbs up, because it really supports my channel by telling the YouTube algorithm that you liked my video and that somebody else might too. And now without further ado, let's get into this year's top 10 tips for writing a book in 2024. With the tips in the video today, we are going to be moving from more general to more specific on actionable things to work on writing your book in 2024. The tips that I'm going to be giving you guys today are going to move from more general to more specific and actionable tips to writing your book in 2024. So the first tip that I have for you today is to keep track of all of your ideas. Whenever you come up with a new idea, whether it is a fully fledged idea, which most of them are not, or an idea of what a character might wear or what a character might say or something that might happen in a book, write it down. Make sure you write it down. And even if you wake up from a dream and you're like, oh, that can make an interesting book, write it down. Keep track of all of your ideas. First of all, you don't want to forget those ideas, but you also never know what those ideas are going to blossom into. Or even if you never use that idea specifically, rereading that idea further on in your writing journey might spark an idea for another concept or idea or something that will make one of your future books even better. That's something that I've rediscovered recently, is that as I've been going back over some of my older book ideas and my book concepts and everything, I have been surprised in the ways that those ideas are sparking new ideas for projects that I'm currently working on and other projects that I'm currently brainstorming for. So that's been a really fun thing, and every time I get to use an idea, it's just more motivation for me to continue writing all of my ideas down. Tip number 2 is to figure out what your writing goal is. A novel is defined as a book that is more than 40,000 words, but more specific average word counts are based on the genre of the book and the age group that the group is being targeted at. I don't know how to say that better, but like if it's a children's book or a middle grade or a young adult or an adult, for example, like an adult fantasy book will tend to be much longer than a middle grade fantasy book on average. There are exceptions, but for the sake of simple math, we're going to say that you want to write a book that's going to be roughly 100,000 words long. If you want to work towards writing this book over the span of 6 months, that's going to be roughly 500 words a day, and then you can start scheduling in that time. If you want to average writing 250 words a day for the entirety of the year, that will give you a 100,000 word book by the end of the year. So as soon as you have an idea for what your writing goal is, you can start to break that down into what you want to accomplish daily or weekly or monthly in the word count department. And then I strongly suggest tracking your progress with writing a book. I keep track of my word count in a spreadsheet just because that makes it really easy for me, and then I can color code based on how many words I got, and it just helps me visualize progress, because otherwise it kind of just seems like the pages are endless. And for me, tracking my word count really makes it feel like I'm making progress. Tip number 3, now that you've figured out what you want to end up accomplishing, and now that you started breaking down that goal into more bite-sized pieces, it's time to try and figure out when you write best. Some people write the best in the morning, like before they go to work or before they go to school. I have never been a morning person. So through trial and error, I have discovered that my best creative hours are from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., and I try to prioritize my writing during that time. Once you sort of figure out when you write best, whether that's in the morning or on a lunch break or after work or after you put your kids to bed or whatever it may be, start trying to protect that writing time. Whether this means telling your family like, hey, during this hour, I don't want to be bothered, I'll be writing. Great, love that. Just try and protect your time. You can also try scheduling it in on your calendar if that makes it easier for you. And if you can't sit down for hours on end to write, which most people can't, don't be afraid to utilize smaller pockets of time, which is continued in a later tip. Tip number 4 is to start cutting down on distractions. For some people, that means turning off your Wi-Fi if you're not writing in Google Docs or something that you need a Wi-Fi connection to write with. For me, it's turning off my email notifications on my computer. Sometimes it's going into a different room than the rest of your family and closing closing the door so that you have the time and space to write. And one of my favorite tips to stay off of my phone when I'm writing is to set up a time lapse aimed at the computer where I can kind of see the screen and kind of see the keyboard, so that when I watch it back later on, it looks like I was getting a lot done because the pages are scrolling, my fingers are flying across the keyboard. It looks like I got a lot done, and I know that I want to be able to watch that video when I'm done with my writing, so I know that I can't interrupt the time lapse, otherwise it's not going to look like I did as much. Which is a part of why I love making YouTube videos, because I make YouTube videos to hold myself accountable to writing, and so using this time lapse technique was really helped with staying off my phone while also getting footage for YouTube videos. Tip number 5 leads off of tip number 3, which is all about writing sprints and productive breaks. Writing sprints are a great way to utilize your time when you have only like small pockets of time throughout the day or even once a day, but a writing sprint is where you sit down for one of those small pockets of time and you either set a timer or don't set a timer, but then you only allow yourself to write for 15, 20, 30, upwards of 45 minutes if you can, but some of my most productive writing sprints are about 20 to 30 minutes long. And then even when I have hours upon hours to be writing, I personally still like to use writing sprints because I can sit down, write for 20 or 30 minutes, stand up, go do a productive break for 10 to 15 minutes, and then come back to my writing. And what a productive break for me at least is getting up and doing my laundry or my dishes or something where my hands are busy and I'm still being productive, but nothing that's like taxing on my brain, so that my brain can still kind of be working on my story, whether I realize it or not. But doing something like that gets me up and moving, which is also better for my posture and everything else, and then getting to go sit back down and continue writing with another writing sprint is the way that I have found that I have my best writing sessions. Tip number 6 is to write in less serious fonts and colors. I think one of the biggest things that trips people up with like the blank page syndrome is the feeling that whatever is written on that page needs to be perfect in the first pass, which is a complete side note of a lot of new writers and a lot of writers just in general compare their rough drafts or their rough brand new baby idea to a fully fledged, fully edited, like fully professionally edited, published book that you can find in a bookstore. So that being said, your rough draft does not need to be that serious. It does not need to be written in Times New Roman or Arial font. That is what school papers and academic papers are published in. Your rough draft does not need to be that serious. If it helps alleviate some of the pressure, which I know that at least it does for me, don't write in Times New Roman, don't write in Arial, and don't write in black font. I have always been a fan of color coding, so when I'm drafting something new, I like to color code my writing sprints. So when I sit down for my 20 minutes, I set the font color to green, for example, and then I write in green for that entire writing sprint. When I get up and take a productive break, I go and do that, and then I come back, and then I change the font to purple or some other color that's just much more fun. And some people are gonna hate this, but I also draft in Comic Sans. It just kind of feels like I'm writing in crayon, and there's nothing serious about writing in crayon, which is then great because then you can always highlight it and change it to black later. You can always highlight it and change the font later. I don't want your first draft to stress you out, so I would highly recommend trying writing in different fonts and using different font colors. And it's so much more fun. Tip number 7 is to start trying to figure out how much information you feel like you need before you begin writing your story. And I wanted to phrase it that way because every writer is different. You may have heard the terms plotter or pantser, but that is by no means a binary. Those are not the only two options. I would say that it's more of a spectrum from plotter to pantser, and every writer falls somewhere within that. The people that tend to lean towards much more of the plotter side need to know a lot more about their story before they begin writing. And the people more on the pantser side of the spectrum just need to know like the bare minimum. They might need to know where they start, they might need to know where they end, but pantsers can just kind of start and then fly by the seat of their pants. I would consider myself to be more of a pantser. I know that for me personally, when I start planning something out in too much detail, especially if I start trying to make like an outline before I've begun drafting, it kind of removes the joy for me, because the joy for me is like discovering the story as I write. But everybody's different. If you are much more on the plotter side of things, Google is going to be your best friend, but it can be beneficial if you can start figuring out if you feel like you need to know a lot of information before you start writing, or if you're just ready to go and just want to get started where you are. And while I wholeheartedly believe what I said for tip number 7, tip number 8 is that every single chapter should benefit the plot of the story and progress your story towards the end. The way that I learned this best was taking Brandon Sanderson's creative writing class, and the way that he phrases this is the 3 Ps, and those 3 Ps work together to progress your plot towards the end of the book. Promise, progress, and payoff is how you you write a really satisfying book because it continues to lead the reader into the next page. Tip number 9 is about the blank page, but not just when you begin writing your story, which I still strongly recommend writing in colored fonts and less formal fonts, but after you've been writing your story for a little while. If you get stuck after a couple pages or a couple chapters, there is no need to fret. No one has ever said that you need to write chronologically. You can jump around in your story and go to the next scene that's really exciting to you. However, with something that I've noticed with myself and a couple of the other writers that I've talked to on the subject, if you have a scene that you are the most excited to write about, whether it's the last scene of the book, for me right now it's a scene in book 2 where I know that I won't finish editing book 1 if I go ahead and write this scene in book 2, so I'm making myself wait. So I would say you are totally free to jump around and write whatever scenes you are really feeling connected to right now, but if you have like a pinnacle scene, don't write that one. I would personally recommend waiting and using that one as a reward for writing the rest of the book leading up until that point. But when somebody doesn't write in chronological order, they can always go back and weave those scenes together with the in-between scenes, which I know can be super helpful for pantsers and was a huge breakthrough when I realized that I didn't need to write in order. It's not that it's not that strict. And as long as I didn't write the scene that I most wanted to write, I was going to finish the book. Tip number 10 for writing a book in 2024 is to lean into the community. Now more than ever, writing communities are becoming more accessible online. A lot of my writing friends I've met through Instagram, and I'm meeting more and more through YouTube. I got invited to the writing group that I participate in through Instagram, and social media is just such a great way to find other writers, both online and in your area. You can also try to find like a local writing group, which I highly recommend. Having a writing group was the best part about getting a creative writing degree in college, and then finding a writing group after college has been so incredibly helpful to keep myself accountable to writing, to make more creative friends, and to hold myself accountable to my goals. So I highly recommend trying to find a writing community or somebody within your family or friends that will help hold you accountable towards your writing goals. Those are my top 10 tips for writing a book this year. If you made it this far, good job. I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for your writing journey this year. You've already taken a really important step, and I'm so excited for you to continue on with writing your book this year. And now I want to send you over to Anna's channel. If you have not yet watched her video, you can find it right here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Anna, so much for collabing with me, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye.